We go right there. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, goodbye. See you later. This is Jason. I'm KC5HWB. This is another edition of Ham Radio 2.0 YouTubers Bunch. And this is kind of a follow-up to the ARRL episode that we posted a while back, which I'll link right there on YouTube. You can click on that and watch it. We got a couple of new voices in with us today. And we've got some comments that were made on the video. And I will say that for all the negative comments that are all over YouTube about everything, I got a lot of positive comments on our ARRL discussion video from the YouTubers bunch. And some people were commenting about how much they did not like the ARRL, but they were appreciative of the efforts we made to get together and discuss ARRL. So I found all the comments to be positive, whether they were positive or negative about ARRL. I think they were all very constructive. So I was happy to see that. Still interested to hear your thoughts. I got emailed from my section manager that had some comments about our video. So I know somebody from the ARRL watched it. I sent the link to my division director, and he's in the middle of an election right now. So I have a feeling that he watched it, but he hadn't replied to me yet. So we'll more on that later. But stay tuned, and we're going to get to it.
Shut up and sit down.
We'll start here. I'd like to welcome and switch back here to this view. And today there's 6 of us online, including me. I've got Mike, K8MRD, Kyle, AA0Z. We've got Christian, K0STH, Rob, N1NUG, and Josh, KI6NAZ. Welcome to the next edition of the YouTubers Bunch. Rob and Christian were not here for our first ARRL, so glad that they have joined us for the second one. Rob, I'm going to let you go first. Just tell us basically, and I know you had some comments on the video, which, again, you said a minute ago. That's how you kind of found, or that's how I found you. I'll put it that way. And and so tell us, are you an ARRL member? What do you think about him? You know, a little 2 or 3 minute blurb about him, and the floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah, I'm an ARRL member. I wasn't when I first got licensed back in the day. I was younger. And I felt kind of the way that some of the guys have kind of expressed back then, that the ARRL really wasn't doing much for me and that kind of a thing. But as I kind of progressed in my radio career, so to speak, and I'm not a super active ham in the first place, even now, but as I kind of progressed through, I kind of changed that attitude as I got involved in the hobby and saw the things that the ARRL does for it. And the thing that really changed my mind is that now I live in Connecticut. I live a half an hour from headquarters. So I finally went down there and took the tour. Anybody can go in there and they'll give you a tour. They have somebody on standby to guide you around. And it's a pretty thorough tour. And I couldn't believe all the things that they do there that are behind the scenes that the average day-to-day ham doesn't necessarily think about. You know, they've got the whole publishing end of it, the technical publishing. You know, not only do they have to do the publishing, they have to do the research and that kind of a thing. So it kind of blew my mind when I saw that and thought about it and said, oh yeah, you know, these guys are really publishing these books that we all kind of find useful in the magazines and whatnot. And then the emergency communication support that they do, not only just ARRLs, but they have the go boxes that they send out to disaster areas and everything. And there's just a lot of good things there that I never kind of knew about until I went there and saw it. So after that, I really became kind of a supporter. Now, having said that, any organization is going to have its weak points and things that it can improve upon. And, you know, that's the case with the ARRL too. And some of those things were pointed out in the previous video, and I agree with some of those, and some of them maybe not so much. And I know some of the things they're working on. I know they've got the new magazine coming out soon for the kind of the newer operators and that kind of a thing. So I think the new regime down there has kind of been listening to the feedback over the last couple of years and starting to make some of those changes that people have been asking for. And I think it's going to be exciting to see what they come up with over the next couple of years, you know, to kind of address some of that stuff. But yeah, for the most part, I think I'm an ARRL supporter, and will continue to be one.
Cool, good deal. Yeah, I know you had mentioned. In fact, I think that's what you were commenting on our first video, was the fact that you live so close to there and you'd been there for a tour. I got to do that. I'm going to have to come up there and do that, and
Yeah, definitely
figure out if they'll let me record it and whatnot, and say, look, man, I want to support you guys. Let me put it on my YouTube channel. So that's what you should do. But
yeah,
I'll do
when
it
I went
also.
there, I really wasn't doing that with the channel at the time, and I hadn't really thought about it. But yeah, maybe I'll find some time to head down there and do it.
Yeah, it'd be a great episode. In fact, I might hit you up. Maybe we'll go tour it together.
Hey, by all means.
Yeah, that might be a fun. That'd be definitely for a fun discussion, if nothing else.
Anybody, get the whole gang out. We'll storm the place.
We'll have to find a soda or a park on close to Activate so that Mike and Josh will show up. But we can do that.
There's not too many sodas around Connecticut. We got a few small hills, but POTA definitely. We can work that out.
Yeah, we can do that.
If they let me work W1AW, I'll go.
Oh yeah, that's open too.
They will. Yeah, they'll let you do that.
I'm down.
Well, when I went there, we spent the morning in the tour, and then the afternoon we worked W1AW, me and my buddy, and that was a lot of fun. I had never really, and again, being kind of a part-time ham, I'll say, I had never really worked the pile-up until I got behind the mic at W1AW, and that was a pile-up. That was a lot of fun, though.
That's fun. Cool. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate your comments. Let's go to Christian. First of all, welcome to the show, Christian. Christian's not used to being in front of a camera, only a microphone, I think. So love to hear your comments about the ARRL in general, what you think about it, what you think about our first episode, and the floor is yours.
Well, this is complicated, and I think the more people that you talk to, you'll get a lot of different responses. I look at the lifetime members, and I'm like, wow, I mean, that's a lot of money, for the lifetime membership. And I think I come at this from two sides, and thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate you inviting me. As a content creator, as a podcaster, I think it's important for me to be licensed, just as it's important for me to buy my own equipment. I want to be able to speak freely and not, be given everything to me. And then I feel this way that I need to kind of put it over as the best thing. So as I'm creating content, I think if I'm going to criticize the league, then I should at least be a member. I do understand that it's a member supported organization, but it's not member driven. They don't ask us. Somebody mentioned on the first show, why don't they talk to YouTubers? Look at the collective group of people here and the numbers that we pull in. We all share an audience. I truly believe we all are sharing some facet of our audience here. Why don't they come and talk to us and just ask? I don't need it for ego purposes, but talk to me. And you know what? Maybe my listeners are telling me something that could be of value to you. I think you guys made some solid points. So I've been a member since 2012. It's sort of what you do. And that was before I even started 100 Watts on Wire. And I maintain it just so I can speak freely. Now, have I benefited much from it? This is where the elders of our community may say, young man, youngster, you have certainly benefited. But no, I mean, I get the magazine. I don't read it much. I do agree with some of the articles are a bit over my head. I'm a broadcaster. I'm a producer. I went to this side of the opposite side of the microphone later in life, out of curiosity. I'm not an engineer. So this stuff is a little over my head. And as a member, I thought Puerto Rico, if we're speaking candidly and frankly, and I think you guys did, I thought Puerto Rico was a mess. I thought it was a blatant PR move. And somebody mentioned publications and all the stuff that they do. It was Rob. I was expecting, okay, look, at least come out with some report of what you found. Tell us what went wrong. They came back like superheroes, like they parachuted in there. And this isn't to take away from the crew that went there. They called it the force of 50. 50 people didn't even go, guys, right? So I thought I was offended a little bit by this marketing push. At least I felt that's what it was. I thought maybe they released some books about it, which was a way to make money. I was offended about that. But again, not to take away from the people who went there and served. I do appreciate that effort. And being interested in MCOM, I think it's a great thing. I thought about deploying. I've got a young family. You don't self-deploy, but going there to help, we should have stayed longer. They still need help. They still need us, and they still need help. So this is kind of where I am with the league. I'm a member, and I pay my money just to be able to speak freely to you because you've asked me that. And I talk about that on the show. When I mentioned Puerto Rico on the show, I reached out to the league. Come tell me different. Come tell me something different than I'm saying. You're open door. Nothing. And I thought that, as a member, I don't deserve it. But with some person with an audience, maybe it would have been smart to make the rounds. Just go, I got to talk to Josh. I got to talk to Jason. I got to talk to Rob. We got to get out ahead of this. And anyway, I don't want to get too chatty with you, but that's where I am. And I don't know if that's clearing up anything for you. That's kind of my position on it. They probably do serve us. The magazine's not worth the money. That could be the bourbon talking. But, I don't know. I get it. And I continue just to be able to speak freely. I'll send it back to you, Jason.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. And one thing that I did gather from our first, and I'll say this out loud because Jerry wouldn't care, but he was very anti-ARRL on that first episode. And I wish he was here with us tonight. He had a conflict. He couldn't join us tonight, but he'll be here on the next one. But he had a lot of good points, though. I mean, he didn't come out and just rip on him for no good reason. He had a lot of good points. And one thing that I gathered is that, it really depends on your section manager and your division director where you live, because none of us live in the same place. Well, there's several of you guys out there in California for some reason. But no one, Johnny is the only other YouTuber who's been on the show that lives in Texas, but he wasn't on that episode, and he's not here tonight. Kyle's out there in St. Louis. Josh and Bob and David are out there in California. Christian, tell me where you went. I should know that, but I don't remember.
It's easy to say St. Louis. I'm just north, though. Kyle would know. I'm north up near Florissant, near the rivers, a little bit north.
Okay, good. Yeah, I was thinking St. Louis for some reason. I don't remember why. So, and then, of course, Rob's up there in Connecticut. So I think, it's fair to say that we each have our own viewpoints of our section and division managers because they're all different. The guys that run the North Texas and South Texas sections and the West Gulf Division are very hands-on and very communicative with me and with people. They attend all the ham fests in this area. And I realize that, some people may not be able to say that. And so our viewpoints differ in that regard, but you're right. If you reached out to them and asked for feedback, you should have got something, especially as a member. I mean, I was telling Jerry he needs to reach out to his. He's like, well, I'm not a member. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're a ham radio operator. You're not a member, but you're still a ham radio operator. You still have a voice in the ham radio community. But if you are a member, they should certainly be responding to you that way, in my opinion. So, if
I can add, though, let me just echo what Josh said on your last one. The transparency, from what I always hear, it is super political there. Okay, amateur radio I never thought was so political. It is. It's deeply political. That's my perspective. Josh said something, I think it was you, Josh, and he said something about transparency. If you need help, if you need something, put the word out there. Let us help you if we want to help you. And that's important. They should be talking to him about what is your interpretation of, and maybe he'll give it again tonight and it'll go viral again. But it was a very important point. Transparency, they don't have to be, I guess, but when you're supported by members and we don't necessarily get to call the shots, you might want to be a little more transparent. Maybe you want to ask. You guys got me excited now. I hope I'm not sweating.
No, you're good.
You don't have to worry about that on a podcast.
Right. Right. Totally. Okay, cool. Well, good. So what I got here is I got some comments, and a couple of these guys emailed me directly. And one of them, and I can't remember which one it was, one of them put comments directly on the YouTube video. So I wouldn't mind reading that one out loud. I'm gonna read them all out loud. But I'm not gonna share names and call signs just out of respect for people because
Address, social security number.
Yeah,
credit
exactly.
card,
Yeah.
all of the above.
So-
we need that. Ham radio is about being open, right?
That's right.
You
Yeah.
got to be able to put your info out there.
Something like that. So, so I've got comments from 3 different ham operators, and I'm going to read these, and then we're going to talk about them. So you guys just whatever you want to, and I emailed all these comments to the guys who are on this channel tonight, so they've all had them. But I'm going to read these out loud for the audience. So, and this guy I know for sure emailed me directly. He says, I watched your video on ARRL membership and found it very informative and still entertaining. That was probably mostly because of Josh, the entertaining part. I want to make 2 points. No one on the panel could name one benefit that ARRL has done lobbying for amateur radio in recent history. One, I believe ARRL was instrumental in getting the PRB1 passed in 1985. I think we talked about that, but again, that was like 30 years ago. Note, it did not cover CC and R's regulations. I'm not sure what he means by that. Back in 1988, I put up a 40-foot tubular tower with the Mosley TA-33 at my residence. After neighbors complained, the city tried to regulate me tower, I think he says my tower, as commercial radio television equipment. I would have to have a commercial permit to use it, costing over $2,000. I contacted the ARRL and a local lawyer who was a ham, and he took my case pro bono and sent a letter to the city explaining what they were doing was illegal under the PRB1, and if I went to court, they would lose. I got a permit for the tower free of charge as an end result. And now to the second point, I believe the reason the bill to regulate CC and R's, I'm not sure what he means by that, failed in the U.S.
CC and R, really quickly, CC and R is covenants, corrections, and restrictions. It's basically homeowners association laws.
Okay, that's what I assumed he was talking about. Okay. To regulate CC and R's failed in the U.S. Senate was Senator Bill Nelson of Florida. The bill was passed in the U.S. House, but never got to committee because of Senator Nelson, who was backed by lobbyists for homeowners associations, spent millions trying to defeat the bill. The ARRL was out-lobbied and outspent by dollars on this issue. Now, this information was distributed to ARRL members a couple of years ago when Bill died in the Senate. When the bill died in the Senate. Yes, I like reading advertisements in QST. Yes, the technical articles are written on a level that you need an engineering background to understand what the author is trying to say. I saw your call sign this afternoon on 15-meter FT8, and I saw you in Costa Rica. What happened to Gary Pierce and Ham Radio now? Did he get ill or pass away? No.
No.
No, Gary Pierce handed off Ham Radio now to David W0. I can never remember David's call sign. But he was on this show during that ARRL presence. He was. So, yeah, David, Ham Radio Now. He's got the Ham Radio Now flag on his microphone. That he's doing Gary's show now. So, out of what I just read, you guys... floor is open. Go ahead.
Let me dive into that really quickly. So one correction, it's covenants, conditions, and restrictions. So I did a video on homeowners association antennas, an antenna like a stealthy antenna or whatever. And so I kind of fell down this rabbit hole. And so, yeah, the ARRL was involved in that. And basically what it allowed is for you to be able to put up an antenna for like receiving emergency broadcast, stuff like that, broadcast radio or broadcast television.
A receive antenna, not a transceive. Not that they would know the difference, but that's exactly the point. The size dimensions of what you can erect is about the same size that you would need for like a VHF UHF radio. So that is basically considered inclusive of that. You can erect something like that. What he mentions recently, so moving forward from that, right? So we'll give credit, but moving forward from that, there was this kind of like antenna reciprocity thing that they wanted to do where no, you can assemble an antenna. That bill is currently on the Senate floor, as was mentioned, and it was heavily lobbied by the governing homeowners association body. And so far did they lobby it that they were able to get verbiage modified in it that basically still gave all the yes or no final decision making back to the HOA. Mm-hmm. So the whole point with the ARRL and trying to battle the HOAs was to basically say, no, you should be able to have with some reasonable amount an antenna.
And they're talking about HF antennas generally here.
Right.
And so they put forward this plan, and it was generally accepted. It went through the House, and it went to the Senate. And during this whole process, it kept getting shipped on by the lobbyists, to the point that the last step was basically the HOA saying, well, yeah, we agree everybody should have an antenna. That's all great, but we want the final authority. And so that's kind of where it sits right now. So you still have to go to the HOA board of directors and say, hey, I want to assemble this antenna, and you're wholly up to their decision making on whether they allow you to do it or not. And that's kind of what I think the ARRL was trying to get away from that. So they got beat. They got beat politically in this sense, I think, as of right now, as of the way that bill is written or modified.
I think that you're correct. So, Kyle, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, that email that you read, I did not know that if you emailed the ARRL that they had some type of free legal service that maybe they kind of give out and say, hey, if you're having trouble with your, not I guess homeowners associations, but if you're getting beef from your local government that you don't live in a restricted area, we can write you a letter and say, hey, this antenna is, we're not contacting aliens with this thing. We're,
I took his exact statement. Now, I just did a copy and paste this from the email he sent me. His exact statement was, I contacted ARRL and a local lawyer who was a ham who took the case pro bono. So I don't get the impression that the lawyer came from the ARRL. It was just someone he knew. I think.
Gotcha. Okay. Stand corrected.
So, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if they had something like that.
Well, I mean, that would be a great thing to advertise if they had lawyers and lobbyists, that you could, as part of your membership, that was part of, like, you got one free letter a year or something. I don't know, for your local government to say, hey, I want to put an HF antenna and I'm getting restrictions. Can you help me out here?
Right. That'd be great.
I think I've heard stories of people, at least locally here, having support from the ARRL when it comes to local government. I don't know the details. I don't know any of that or what was involved. It might have been in putting up towers and things like that. And I don't know the extent of the help, but I think if you do contact them, they'll at least give you something. It may not be legal advice, but they may give you some talking points and things like that.
You think they have you think they have a louder voice or bigger guns in Connecticut than they do in other places?
No. Well, maybe. We had an issue here a few years ago when they passed our distracted driving laws. And for a while, operating mobile ham radio or while you were driving was illegal. And if I followed the story correctly, the law got reversed. So ham radio you can use a ham radio mobile. But the ARRL didn't initiate that change to the law. I think it was a combination of a local club or a couple of local clubs and a local state senator that then went to the ARRL and got their help, and then they got the law overturned. So I think at the state level, they just don't have the reach that they do at the federal level. Understandably so. They'd have to have a lot of people in a lot of places to do that.
They've tried to pass that law here in North Texas a few times in various cities about how, and it's what they're trying. I think what they're trying to do is keep people from talking on their freaking cell phones.
Yeah.
While they're driving down the road like this, So they passed a law in one of the cities here that said you can't talk on a device unless it's hands-free or unless it has a microphone attached to it. Because police officers, fire departments, they talk on the radio when they're driving down the road. Taxi, tow trucks, and these guys, they talk on the radio when they're driving down the road. So ham radio was excluded, and that was one city here. But several other cities have tried to pass a law like that, and the ham clubs have always taken up arms with that. And I think when they went to the city and said, do you mean, and once they explained it, they're like, no, that's not what we're talking about. Because nobody really cares about a ham radio that you're holding a microphone like this. They care about their people talking on the phone or texting while they're driving. It's the main thing. But yeah, that's good that I think that's good that the ARRL gets involved in stuff like that.
Yeah, I think they will, but you have to approach them, or somebody has to approach them, and then I think they try to help as much as they can. At least that's what I've seen. Maybe you guys have seen other things. But
Okay. Mike, you have anything?
Not a lot on this topic. I think it's been 30 years since he said something has happened, and I know the ARRL. This was just going around this whole homeowners association thing, just within the last few years, and it didn't really go anywhere. It got shot down again
Twice,
and
I think. Right? They had two
I
separate
don't
bills.
know.
I think it was two.
But I know it was like there was like a big thing when I was an ARRL member. I remember reading about it in QST because it was one of the few articles that I could understand. But I still liked reading the articles that I couldn't understand. I think it's a great.
Right.
But anyway, so nothing happened. It's like, and I guess you're getting outgunned with just more money. If the HOAs of the world have more money to give to the lawyers of the world, you're going to lose. But it's if this is like one of the things that is supposed to be a benefit to being a member, they're failing. So,
well, I will give them points for trying, though. They absolutely went out there and tried. Yeah,
little baby Yoda. Godspeed, little baby Yoda. Some of you will get that.
Yeah.
Do or do not. There is no try. Okay.
So I will throw this out there because, again, I did this live stream on this. The HOA's got some pretty big guns. In 2019, 70 million people are living in residences in an HOA. So factor that against how many people elect to join the ARRL, and you take all that HOA money and they can roll that into kind of bullying their way into something. And again, we really shouldn't slam the ARRL about the evil that HOAs do, right? They're bad on their own, right? That's like going up against the devil and losing, right? Nobody should be really completely surprised by that. So I give them points for trying. I try to be objective in this, and I think that they really did try to make this happen.
All right, I'll take some of it back.
Some of it. Only some.
Only some of it. Okay, so let me read the next question. And I say question. It's not a question. It's a statement. Okay, so on the Amateur Radio Parity Act, from what I can gather from the ARRL, the new regime asked to withdraw the current proposal, largely because in negotiations with HOA lobby groups, this goes with what you're saying, Josh.
Yep, exactly.
It was watered down too much, so it's back to the drawing board and worked out what might get through the sausage making process. And
until they can get something away from the HOA having the final call, which again is going to be politicking, there's not much headway they can make in that area.
Yeah. So he goes on to say, and that's kind of like the end of that thought. He goes on to say, I agree with the transparency and just owning up to mistakes. A common problem with all levels of organizations, individuals to the White House, whoever's living there. He makes that clear. It's also a no-brainer that they should create W1AW videos about some labs and their processes. I suggest emails to the CEO to lobby that sort of thing.
Bob Allison does make videos in the lab, doesn't he?
I think that, like once a year.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they have, but they're very, very sporadic.
They do have an Instagram. They do have different things. Now they've got the What's Next podcast or So Now What? Sorry, So Now What podcast. Mm-hmm. They're out there trying. I get that, but we're all talking right now via the internet. We're live in a sense. This is not a step away from live streaming. There's no reason they can't live stream operations on W1AW. Mm-hmm. It would be nothing. Like just live stream guests that say, yeah, absolutely, put me on the video, and just do that. Anytime someone comes in, flip a switch, make it easy. It's super easy to live stream now. Flip a switch, start streaming. Free content. Boom, right on their YouTube or wherever they want to host it.
Maybe I'll drive down there one of these days and see if I can get them to do it.
And have them get on their YouTube and point a camera at it. It seems like a no-brainer. No-brainer.
Your YouTube may have more subscribers than theirs does, though. So,
mine?
No.
Or no, yeah.
Rob's
probably does.
I was talking about Rob, but yeah, yours definitely does. But
but they just got to do it. That would pick up.
Right.
It would pick up
Correct.
subscribers. They just have to do it and commit to it.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. First, okay, Josh, you had something to say about QST. Why don't you go ahead about that, if you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a big proponent of QST, aside from the last time we did one, and I held up the number of how many pages there were that are ads. And I get
Yeah.
people like some of the ads. That's fine. Nothing a problem like that. But being objective, I agree that we want the technical detail. The ARRL is supposed to be like the pinnacle of this technical hobby, and it is a technical hobby. So having them deep dive and go down the rabbit hole on a lot of stuff, I'm in support of. So to the people that sometimes say like, I don't get it. I'm going to hold this up because this is, something that they also produce. Everybody should have one of these. If they don't, a proper handbook, ARRL handbook, all the terms they talk about in their articles and whatnot, you can get most of the information out of this. And again, we live in a wonderful world with the power of the internet. You can Google most of these terms and you can figure it out. So it's not that far away, and you're probably mentally adjacent for most of the stuff that you kind of know what they're talking about. But if you want to know that detail, it exists. And I don't think we should disparage that. I think we want that. And I think they know that, and that's why they're making this new magazine that's going to be, for the mouth breathers that don't for some of the people in this chat that are complaining about the technical detail. I'm kidding, of course. I don't mean your mouth breathers, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I don't, it bothers me. I don't want to get too deep into this because this is kind of off subject, but it bothers,
Here we go. Hang on, guys. Hang on.
Hold on.
Hold on to your
Here we
balance.
go. You guys know I'm pretty heavy into DMR. What did you say that made Josh do that?
Hold on to your balance.
I'm so sending you a speaker wire for your birthday this week.
Josh can't
no,
keep it together.
he's done. He's done. Okay, guys, we'll have everyone have a good night. We'll see you next time because the video's done. No, okay. So everybody knows I'm good. I'm pretty heavy into DMR, and here lately I've been doing a lot more HF than DMR, but I'm still pretty good in DMR. It really kind of bothers me to a certain extent, and I don't mind helping people out. If someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I have a question about DMR. I don't understand X, Y, Z." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I can explain that to you. No problem." But when I get emails and comments on YouTube and they're just like, "Oh man, this is ridiculous. It's too hard. It's just too confusing. How the heck does anybody want to do this?" Is just, and I'm like, "Dude, you're a freaking ham radio operator. Figure it out." That's what hams do. You figure it out. I mean, it's okay to ask people for help. That's not what I'm saying, but stop complaining. My gosh, you sound like a child, for crying out loud. It's just, I mean, you're supposed to be a ham radio operator. I mean, innovation is our thing. Figure it out or ask someone for help. Stop complaining about it, though. That's my only thing. Anyway, rant over. So.
Oh, Christian, go for it. Were you putting a hand up because you're
trying to be careful with stepping on and pushing?
No, step.
Yeah.
We're used to it. Go for it.
Totally.
To kind of piggyback on what Josh said and what you said, I agree. And when I say the articles are over my head, that means the articles are over my head today. I do believe that they should continue to put those in there because I have stacks of old ones that I revisit. And if I'm into something new now, I can go back and figure out a way. That's another important thing about the work that you guys do is you're creating a repository of work. If you want to learn how to build a 10-meter dipole or whatever it is that you want to do, you can go back and find that. And that's kind of where I go, and I'll tunnel back, and I'll go through these old magazines and I'll look back, and if I'm at that point in my learning and my interest, it's there. So I'm with Josh on keep it going. I may be flipping through to see what the new tuner is going to be, but it have that as a resource in your arsenal. I've got a stack of them, and I'll pick them up. People give them away at Hamfest.
Yeah.
I think they're great pieces of art, especially the old ones. They're smaller. They're beautiful. So they're there as a resource. I don't think they should dumb it down. And I know that they'll probably take some heat for this new thing they're putting out. I don't know what it's called, Get on the Air or something like that. Fine. It's an effort.
The new magazine.
Whatever.
Yeah.
There's some benefits there, but that's how I feel about the articles. Keep them coming. It's good, and hams can go to them as they need them, and that's what I do.
I mean, the science of antennas hasn't changed, right? So a lot of the information that you see in the old magazines is still valid. Just the radios have changed some, but even still, like there's people that are into the old radios, and there's no reason that that's any less valuable.
There's entire HF nets that are just for old vintage Collins users. or vintage Yaesu users or something like that.
Yeah.
The next comment on my list here talks directly to what we're just talking about. It says, let's not push to get the content in QST dumbed down. For the newer hams who crammed and passed the test without real world knowledge of the subjects, there can and should be a newbie corner established in the magazine, and more forums like this in the podcast. More forums like this podcast. This is a comment from YouTube. The incentive to, so this is, I'll say, this is from N6PRX because he commented on YouTube in open forum, so I'll say that. The incentive to learn and grow one's knowledge base needs to remain and be promoted as a positive thing. Let's realize that in general, the newer generations want everything immediately, and that if they don't get it, then it's not fair, but some things take time. Acquiring a wealth of knowledge is one of, if not the biggest lifetime challenges, and there's no substitute for the effort required. Making radio and the associated skills interesting to newcomers is all of our jobs. Becoming an Elmer can still be a useful thing to newcomers, and old-timers looking to expand their base might just have to take a different approach. So I think that completely speaks to what I said and Christian said and Josh said both.
You know, I'm hoping that this new magazine builds upon itself, and they have hardware sections and antenna sections and power supply sections and tinkering sections, and it just builds and builds and builds. And even people who are experts in making antennas can get something out of the new articles, the quote unquote dumbed down articles, to pick something up. You know, I hope that they are reaching out to new hams, and they're just not sitting around in a room in Connecticut thinking, all right, what are we going to write about today? And somebody throws out a topic and it gets written about. You know, I hope that they have a plan together to build, like, you know, talk about the fundamentals of antenna building or how a dipole works, and then start building on top of that. So after a year of reading the antenna section, you have a fundamental better idea on how to build antenna. You might an antenna, and you might go out and actually build one, and then you can read a QST article and say, oh yeah, that is some of the terms that they defined in the new ham magazine, and now I have some context to put that in. Just like Christian said, now I can go back and build upon that and say, oh, now that article that I read a year ago, I'm going to reread that article, and it's going to put it in more context.
Here's one. Check this out. 1951. Just cool. It's got somebody's 35 cents.
Yeah.
And to someone's point, 1962. I mean, you know, satellite tracking. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Satellite tracking, 1962. Here's another one. Orbiting satellite carry amateur radio, 1962. They're smaller. They look a lot different than the things we get today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're pieces of art. I've thought about maybe cutting them up, hanging them up, that kind of thing. But I do go back. And I read through them. And then if I find something, Josh is right. It's just, it's there. It hasn't changed that much.
Right.
Technology has changed it a bit.
I like we were talking about the ads in the last video. I like to go back. I've got a ton of those older CQ and QST magazines because some widow of a ham, I don't remember who it was, like a year and a half ago contacted me. She's like, hey, my husband passed away a while back. He's got like boxes of these things. Do you want them? And I said, sure. So she brought them over. I think her son brought them over, and they just set them on my porch, and there was like 8 boxes of them. So I've got them all going back to like 1949. And reading some of the ads for what they were advertising, hey, new radio, look at this. It takes this brand new kind of tube. I'm like, man, that's pretty nostalgic. I thought that was really fun.
I like that too. I've got a few old ones here, and I like looking back at the old ads. I have some of those radios here. You can't see them, but I've got some of that old stuff. But I want to go back. I like what Kyle said, and I agree with what he's saying. Well, Josh too. Don't dumb down QST, and in fact, maybe bring it up a little bit with the new magazine. Keep the kind of the beginning, articles in the new magazine. Give you the basic theory and whatnot, and then in QST you've got a little bit more explanation, a little more technical information for the people that are in the hobby for that. I think some of those guys are looking at QST and the hobby in general and just feeling that everything has been dumbed down. So I'd almost like to see that brought back up a level and keep the new magazine kind of an introductory and a stepping stone to that.
I'd like to throw something out to the ARRL if they're watching this. I'd like to see them do articles on their test equipment and their logic behind what they do when they put a radio on, on the workbench and they start going over it. I'd like to see their process, because there's no reason why we can't do what they're doing. We may not have access to the same equipment that they have or the same test equipment, but we should be open with that and say, like, this is kind of what we're looking for. This is why we're looking for it. This is what makes a good receiver. Break it down a little bit. I'm not saying dumb it down. I'm saying break it down in why that's important. Why are we looking at these values? You can do this at home with this, and this, and boom, there you go. I think that will elevate the technical knowledge of the general community, just from kind of explaining the thought process a little bit as well.
When I went for the tour down there, Bob Allison did all that right in person in the lab. Pointed to all the different pieces of equipment, explained what they were, why he uses them, why he wanted them, and even showed us a radio. I think the time I went there, the K3S was just about to come out, and he had one on the bench. We were sworn to secrecy. Couldn't talk about it, but he showed us, what he was testing and what he was doing, and it was neat. And you're right, Josh, it would be nice to kind of see that as an article or even a regular feature where they pick one thing and kind of build upon it. I'd like to see that.
I'd like to touch on that, kind of going back to what Kyle said as well. And that, what is it called? On the Air, or Get on the Air, the new bi-monthly publication the ARRL is going to make. Something when I was first licensed as a technician, all I knew was 2 meters and 70 centimeters and repeaters. So, but the second radio I bought was that TYT 9800. And that does 6 meters and 10 meters. And I never used it. But those frequencies are open to some degree. 6 meters, definitely. I think 10 meters is just a little bit for text. But, what would be a cheap way to make an antenna to get on the air on those frequencies? Think about how many technicians are out there that, like, you might not want it. So, for example, there's a guy down the street who has a son that just got his tech license. I think the kid is probably 10 years old. Who wants to talk to a bunch of old farts on a repeater? So what if his buddies got, like, in maybe a Boy Scout troop, they got their techs? Well, what would be an easy way and a fairly affordable way to get on to 6 meters and 10 meters? How to make an antenna? Well, an analyzer is $300-400, so that's not going to cut it. Get a cheap little SWR bridge for $60-70 or $50, however much they are for VHF, UHF. What's the cheapest way to make just a dipole antenna so you can talk to your buddies without having to go back and forth between repeaters and talking to a bunch of old farts like us? You have to make the hobby more exciting for the younger crowd. I think a big goal of the ARRL and a big push, and I commend them for this, but I don't really see much happening, is wanting to get younger people involved. And I think that would be a great kind of strategy for them to, it's got to be cheap. It can't be you're spending $1,000 on an ICOM and you're spending $600 on a 891 and God knows how many hundreds of dollars in coax and analyzers and connectors and this. I mean, the money just pours into this hobby. It really truly is a disease, but for $20-30 you can make a dipole. I tried to make a 6 meter dipole when I was a tech. I don't know if it worked or not. I didn't hear anyone, but I just wanted to experiment. But, like, I wonder how many other techs are even thinking about that. And for under $200, you can get that quad band radio. Granted, that doesn't have sideband, that TYT, so 10 meters might be out. I think the low portion of 10 meters is for techs. They don't they don't give them the FM portion for some reason, which is asinine. So that would be another something to lobby for. Give techs the entire 10 meter band.
All of 10 meters.
Let them play with it. Who cares?
Some of that might be licensing privileges, I think, that a lot of
Well,
people
it is,
don't
but they
dip
could
their
lobby the
toes.
FCC to expand the privileges to techs on,
And they are.
so they can dip their toes into, because you can't if you don't have a rig that's going to do 10-meter sideband, you can't get on 10 meters. So
Mm-hmm.
We've got to stop telling people that, you get an Elmer, right? And, I don't think any of us are too young here, but, I was licensed later on in life. You find an Elmer, what we call an Elmer, a mentor. And the next thing you know, it's that you've got to have this, and it has to be just so. Like all the lessons that they've found, that it's best to have a resonant antenna, cut mono band, put it up 66 feet. No, you want to do just 20 feet. I don't know. So I got to the point where in my beginnings, I definitely paused and thought, maybe this hobby isn't for me. I love radio. I've had a 28-year career in broadcasting, producer stuff, but maybe this isn't for me because I can't submerge a friggin' telephone pole into the ground and put the antenna on top of it just to make this thing just right. And this is what I was told. And so it messed my head up to tuners are bad. Tuners, you can't use tuners mean your antenna is this, and it's like, oh, okay, tuners are bad. Tuners are bad. So I was programmed, and it's taken me quite a bit to unprogram myself to actually even try to do work. So I guess the point being is that, as our group, maybe we need to be a committee that advises other people, or the league is what we're talking about. You got to be able to show, stop calling them youngsters. You don't sound like a 75-year-old man calling somebody a youngster. They're going to hate that. Talk to them meet them where they are, for one. Stop referring to them in Q speak. Talk to them, but teach them that this is something you can do, like the QRP guys, the people in the park. Show them a view. Show them whatever it is. I think we've spent a lot of time learning all this stuff, knowing all this stuff, and then we try to lay it all on people, and it's a little overwhelming to say, yep, cut that thing to 66 feet. Let's get it up a little bit higher, and if you can't, I don't know. That's a compromise.
my dipole is not a half wave up.
Right.
It works fantastic.
I hope
Right.
I am ready through your 20-meter dipole you're sending me.
Yeah, I find myself doing some of that as well. As like, you sometimes forget what you learned in the process of what got you to now, and you don't necessarily take enough time to explain the difficulties you had, and explain it in a way that people don't have the same trials and tribulations as they're coming up to speed with it. And so maybe some things on the QST, maybe some things on the website imply a certain set of already knowing, and that could be helped out a little bit. And maybe that's what they're trying to do with, On the Air and the So Now What podcast. I think they're trying. I think that's good objectively. I think we can say that's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think there is a reality. It might have been Mike or Kyle, that you got to keep in mind that the radio companies are trying to make radios push button, turn them on. Not a lot of knowledge is needed to get them up in the air or get them operating. It's when you start getting into antennas and other stuff, and I think the ARRL acknowledges that in the future, people are going to be tinkering more with their antennas and less with their radios, because we're not required to build our own radio like we used to, or hams used to 50, 60 years ago or whatever. So because you've got these, boxes that you can just buy, and they're all pretty good, put it on the desk. Hey, I don't have to worry about that box. So what's my next thing? I got to get on the antenna. I think they realize that a bit. And that's something we got to consider as well.
How long did it take you guys to get on HF from when you were first licensed?
18 years.
Wow.
A while.
5 years. Yeah.
18
It was when I
years.
found Soda, actually. I stumbled onto Soda, and I was a VHF guy, and I was like, oh, I could just do this with a VHF, UHF radio.
When I got my first license, I was a technician no code, and you had to do Morse code to get an upgrade. So they removed the Morse code upgrade. They removed the Morse code requirement and everything above technician 2006. I got my first ticket in 1994. So I should have gone and upgraded in 2006 is what I should have done. But 18 years. But I wish I would have done it a lot sooner because I love HF. I absolutely love HF.
Just
Well,
a little bit of a go ahead. I'd like to hear from everybody. I was licensed 2012, 2015. I finally got on HF, and there's a point to this. So go ahead, Mike. How long did it take you?
Well, I got licensed in 16. I got my general just a touch over a year after that, and then I got my extra about a year and a half after that. So, within 3.5 years or so, I went all the way to the top. And, once I got the tech and I really got the bug for ham radio, a lot of the guys on the repeaters and really showing me HF and stuff. So I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. And got my general and made my first antenna, bought that Yaesu FT 450 and made my first antenna. And I've been just a ham radio geek. That doesn't even begin to describe how addicted I am.
No.
But yeah, so about 3.5 years to go all the way to the top. So
That's you, Rob.
I got licensed in 1992 on my 19th birthday. That was my birthday present. The ticket came in the mail. I was a no-code tech. And then I upgraded to general in 2003. So I had to do code. I was no good at sending it. I could receive it okay, but I couldn't send it. And then life got in the way. I met my wife and we started a family and that kind of a thing. So I let it lie for a little while. And then 2012, I got my extra right after my son was born. And I've been kind of more in the hobby since then. But I didn't really start actively using any frequencies for transmitting until 4 to 5 years ago or so. I started to get more comfortable with transmitting and talking on the air for a lot of the reasons that, like Josh was saying, just I always felt intimidated by the older guys, not having the right antenna, not having the right radio, whatever. But I've since gotten over that, and now I try to encourage people and say, it doesn't matter what you got for an antenna, radio, whatever, just get on the air and get comfortable with it.
Kyle, what about you? I've got a point to this. I was going to just see. Kyle.
Go for it.
yeah. So I got my ticket in 95, right after they took the no-code tech. And then I upgraded to general, I don't know, sometime in early 2000s. And then I took a bunch of years off. And then I upgraded to extra 2013, maybe 14. And I'll just say, once I got on HF, it was like a new world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think these kids, listen to me, these kids. Here, Christian, your point is taken here.
these youngsters,
The people, youth, and whenever I say youth, that's under 50 years old, right?
Right.
You get new hams on HF. I mean, there's a ton of stuff you can do on VHF. You can have scavenger hunts, you can have contests, you can do geocaching, you can do robotic stuff, airplane, remote control airplane, a bunch of stuff that you can do. But once you get on HF, the world opens, and it is just a new world. So whenever I did that, it was game over. This is awesome, and I started contesting and getting more and more in the air, and so that's my story.
So my point, I guess, is just of the six of us, we all had different routes. I mean, I went a really untraditional way, but it was a financial thing for me to get on HF. It wasn't a licensing thing. I got my tech, and then a few months later, I got the general, but I held for probably 3 years just to get enough money and know-how. I think you study the test, you pass the test, you get your practical experience comes after. I think it took me 3 years to even assemble, getting all the data and all the Elmering I could get to even get to a position to even buy. I was so freaked out that I couldn't buy. I've got a young family. I can't misbuy. I can't buy things twice. So there was a long period of time, and I was trying to get to the point of that window that we all have, that why, and then that's a focus point. Like that's a focus point. How do you help get technicians who need to get this information, get, the financials, all these sort of things in line, because we all have these different paths. I'm really curious about that in between, even if you have that general and you can, what is it that needs to turn you the corner just to get on HF? I don't know. Oops, sorry about that. I've been drinking bourbon. So Mike, it's back to you, another bald guy. Jason, take it away, please. Fade to black on Christian.
There, can you see the reflection?
Right.
Running up in here.
That's why I wear a hat.
Yeah. I gave up on it. I was like 24 or something when I started losing it. I was like, screw it.
Yeah, that's about where I was too. So, hey guys, these are some really good comments. I really like I really like the perspectives here. I think there's a lot of good points that were made. I do think that I do agree with the QST. On the first video, a lot of people said the QST articles were over their heads. I don't think you guys are giving yourselves enough credit. If you can figure out YouTube, you can probably figure out a QST article. But the introduction of the new on the air magazine, I guess this will be an e-magazine as well. I think will be a good addition to get that kind of targets newer hams to the hobby. Is everyone here an extra except me?
I'm not.
Josh is not an extra.
Are you not? Are you a general?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I am too. Yeah. I did not know you were a general. Huh. I don't feel so bad now.
All right. Well, there you go.
No, you should still feel bad.
I know. I do. I'm just trying to make him feel better. So
I'm all right.
So the club that I'm most involved in, I'm a member of like 3 or 4 clubs around here, but the club I'm most involved in, the ones that gave the technician and general classes that I put on my channel a couple of years ago, that are some of my most popular videos, they are working on an extra class. So when they finish that and present it, I'll be attending it and recording it and posting it. So,
And taking the test?
And taking the test?
oh hell yeah, oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
of course, yeah.
I'd love to chat with you below 7.175.
And I've got some buddies that have a weekly or a weekly or daily net. It's just a rag chew. It's a very informal rag chew net, somewhere down around 7.145, 7.15, something like that. And I'm like, I'd love to join you, but I'm lazy. And
I'll tell you what,
can't.
there's a lot of stations in the extra portion
Yeah.
that you will not hear in the general portion. Just DX stations. Not that they're
Yeah.
trying to be snooty and I'm an extra. It's just that's where they are. And
It's just where they are.
And when I was a general, I never tuned down to the extra portion because I'm like, well, why would I even tease myself? But
Right.
so learn from me. Do tune down to the extra portion. Just listen and see how many more stations you hear from other countries or states or wherever the heck you haven't heard before in the general band.
Oh, I've
It's
done
amazing.
that. I've done that. Yeah, totally.
It's awesome.
And honestly, the only reason I haven't upgraded is just because I have not sat down and taken the time to do it. That's the only reason. That's it.
It took a lot more time. I took a class it was like an 8 or 10 week class. We met every day, every Saturday for a couple hours. And we basically just went over the entire question pool, every single question.
Right.
And we just talked about what the answer was. And then I just kept taking practice tests. I read through all the questions and answers. A lot of that stuff is way the heck over my head. Like all that math stuff, I'm never, ever, ever. I just want to talk on the radio.
Right.
But I definitely learned a lot, and it took a lot longer to study for the extra than it did the tech and the general. But dude, the feeling I had walking out of that VE session with that piece of paper in my hand and knowing that I could immediately go home and K8MRD/E.
Yeah, totally.
And I only got to say /E once because and this is a good thing, the VE guys did it like electronically. So the next day, the FCC already had me updated as an extra.
There you go.
That was
awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
So
great.
do it. It's so absolutely worth it.
Yeah. No, I have no doubts. I have no doubts. I just, like everything. In fact, when I went to the Chattanooga Ham Fest in October, the booth right next to mine, I went there not for myself. I went there for someone else. The booth right next to mine was this, I forget the name of, but it was an online CW course. So they would meet once a week, usually Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, once a week. And they had different times and classes. And you'd get online. It was like a Skype session. And you get online for an hour or two. And they would teach you CW. And it's like a 12-week course. And I'm like.
Yeah.
It's not CW Ops, is it?
Or CW Academy, maybe?
CW Academy?
I think it was CW Academy.
Yeah.
I think that's who it was.
Yeah, they meet twice a week.
And
yep.
Maybe it was twice. Yeah. I took photos of all their information, so I've got it all. And I'm like, because I really want to learn CW. I really do.
Yeah, me too.
I
know some guys that in the Jerry Net that have gone through that CW Academy, and they're on the air doing CW now.
Yeah,
so.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
that's
shout out to you, Jose.
Long Island CW Club. Check them out.
That too. Yep.
They're really good, and they're out there multiple times a week. It's pretty awesome teaching people and actually helping you make the contact. They'll listen while the CW is coming in, and they'll decode for you, and you just reply back with what you know. It's pretty awesome.
It's pretty fun. All right, guys. Hi. Thank you very much for joining this edition. A lot of good comments here. I'm sure we've got a lot of good YouTube comments. Check the links below for the YouTube channels and the 100 Watts and Wire podcast that you can check out below and subscribe to. Put your comments below about the ARRL. There's a lot to be said about the ARRL, and we could sit here and we could do a 12-hour live stream and probably still not say everything. So that means that we'll probably do another episode like this. And we had 2 new voices tonight, and we have 2 or 3 guys who weren't here tonight that were here last time. So it'd be cool to get 12 or 13 of us that are part of the YouTubers group and be all talking about the ARRL next time. So we'll see if we can make that happen. But appreciate you joining us tonight. Let us know what you think. Subscribe to all the channels below, and we'll catch you guys next time.